In the previous video, we imported the rule, the phrase builder rule for nouns, as you see here. And now, when we click the Generate button, a person walked. So our noun phrases are in pretty good shape. We'll actually have to do a lot more work to noun phrases eventually, but this is a good beginning. Now it's time to start working on the verb phrases. And to do that, we look in our document. Okay, we're still in document number 3, all types of phrases and clauses. And as I've mentioned before, we provide these English sentences. And you should ask your MTTs to translate these here in the target column. And then, as a reminder, we put parentheses around the verb and brackets around the verb phrase. And you, a linguist, needs to do that for the same thing in the target translations. So you put parentheses around the verbs, brackets around the verb phrase, as you see here. And before we can import these, we need to add our verb forms to the lexicon. So, in addition to putting parentheses around the verb and brackets around the verb phrase, you or the linguist needs to identify what form of the verb you need for each of these rows. Now we need to add these forms to the lexicon. So here we're using the past tense form. Here we're using the stem, John didn't walk. If we skim through these, here we're using a participle, John started walking. And somewhere down here, there's a perfect, okay? John might have walked. Here we're using the perfect form. So before we can import these tables, we need to add these forms to the lexicon for verbs, just like we did for nouns a few videos back. So let's go to our lexicon for verbs. And if we go to forms, right now there aren't any. So let's add a new form. The order doesn't matter. But the names here need to match the names in the document. So we'll say past, and we'll say perfect, and we'll say participle. And we'll find out later, English needs a third singular present form, but that's not in the document. That's pretty unique to English. Well, other languages have subject-verb agreement, but there's nothing in this document about a third person singular form. We could add a row if we wanted. We could do that. We'll do that later, okay, when we need to. For now, this is enough. This is enough to import those rules from the document. Now we need to populate these columns, these forms with rules. So let's write the rules. We'll use Grammar Wizard. So the past tense form is generally the stem plus ed. So we'll say add the suffix. The suffix is ed. The suffix is tag. The form, this will be for the past. And let's add some examples. Walked, jumped. Okay, the perfect form is generally the same as the past tense form. So we'll just copy that. So let's say Grammar Wizard. So that's form selection. Select the past form. This will be for the perfect. And let's add some examples. Have walked, have jumped. And the participle is generally the stem plus ing. So we'll say add the suffix. The suffix is ing. This will be for the participle. Let's add some examples. Okay. So now our forms are populated, but these will need some work. If the stem ends with E, okay, here, if a stem ends with E, then instead of adding ed, we should just add a d. So let's write a morphophonemic rule. So we go back to form rules. Let's use Grammar Wizard. Morphophonemic. When the verb ends with e, beginning of suffix is ed, this will apply to the past tense. The new end of the stem is still e, but the new beginning of the suffix will just be d. This will apply to the past tense form, so E plus ED will change to D. Believed, caused. Okay. So agreed, asked. Okay, the verb to be is too irregular. We can't do that here in the lexicon. We'll do that over in the synthesizing grammar. Okay, became, that's suppletive. Believed, belonged, caused. Okay, cutted. We just want cut. Cut, decided, ate, gave, went, had, heard, helped, hoped, insisted, knew. Okay, note how, okay, this was imported from the document, but we don't want this to be the stem. We want know to be the stem. So I'm going to right click. We're going to say know is a modifier. Know how. We don't have any other modifiers yet. Let's call this a post-verbal, keep the name very generic, modifier. For English, we'll add the clause, but that doesn't make any difference here. If this were another language other than English, it's nice to have a clause. Past is new. Perfect is known. And knowing. To know how. John knows how to swim. Okay, you just entered a new constituent into verb phrases. Do you want to edit your first verb phrase structure rule? Yes. So there's this new modifier with our example, how. We want that to come after the verb. Okay. So back to checking past tense forms. After here, he knew how. Liked, lived, loved. Okay, made. Moved, named, pleased, prevented, read. Said. Saw. Sang. Sat. Spoke. Okay, this is a spelling rule. We want to write a rule that will change Y plus ED to I plus ED. Let's go back to form rules. Let's use Grammar Wizard. We do spelling rules with morphophonemic rules. So morphophonemic, when the verb ends with Y and the beginning of suffix is ED, this applies to the past tense. New end of stem is I, and the beginning of suffix is ED. So this will apply to the past. It's a suffix. Okay, let's add an example. Studied. That's enough. And okay, the suppletive rule needs to come last. So let's drag that down. Okay. Okay. Back to studied, talked, told. Thought. Tried, waited, walked, wanted, wrote. So let's check our perfect. They have agreed, they have asked. Okay, we can't do the verb to be here. They became, they have become. They have believed, they have belonged, they have caused, they have cut, they have decided, they have eaten. They have given. They have gone. They have had, they have heard, they have helped, they have hoped, they have known. They have known, they have liked, they have lived, they have loved, they have made, named, pleased, they have prevented, they have read, they have said, they have seen. They have sung. They have sat. They have spoken. They have studied. They have talked. They have told. They have thought. They have tried. They have waited. They have walked. They have written. Okay? Let's check our participles. Agreeing, asking. We can't handle this here. Becoming. Okay, this is another spelling rule. Let's go to form rules. So when a stem ends with E and then ing, we want to delete that E. Morphophonemic. When a stem ends, end of stem is E, ing. This applies to the participle. New end of stem, we'll delete it, and ing. Okay, so this applies to the participle. It's a suffix, E-ing, and it gets deleted. So this is believing, deciding, etc. Okay, we don't want that rule to apply here. There's probably something about a consonant being involved in the rule. But for our purposes, this is fine. Agreeing, asking, okay, becoming, believing, belonging, causing, okay, cutting, deciding, eating, giving, going, having, hearing, helping, hoping, insisting, knowing, liking, living, loving, making, moving. Okay, seeing, singing, sitting, speaking, studying, talking, telling, thinking, trying, waiting, walking, wanting, writing. Okay, those look in good shape. So now, okay, while we're here, I want to mention, now we have these verbs and their forms. But these are just forms. These are just words sitting here at the lexicon. They won't be used in the translation until, when we come over here, we need to write a rule over here that will go to the lexicon and get those forms. For example, at nouns 1-1, it's still just a person walk. We need to write a rule here that says when the time is past, then go to the lexicon and get the past tense form of the verb. We'll do that in the next video. I just looked at my Word document here. Okay, this is still the same. Number 3, all types of phrases and clauses for English. And I don't know how I missed this earlier, but we do have some third singular present forms here in this document. There's one, and there's a few more down below. So before we can import these rules, we need to add this third singular present form to the lexicon. And it's important to remember this name needs to match the name that we enter into the lexicon, into the software. So let's go ahead and we'll go back to our lexicon, verbs, our forms. Let's add one new form. Now this name has to match third singular present. We don't need a sample sentence or a comment. And the form rules, we'll use Grammar Wizard. Okay, the third singular present form is generally the stem plus s. So this will be add a suffix. Suffix is s. Let's call it third singular present. And this will be for the third singular present form. Okay, that all looks good. Let's enter a few examples. Asks, eats, walks, jumps. That's more than enough. Okay. There we have it. Okay. He agrees. He asks. Okay, we can't do the verb to be here. He becomes, he believes, he belongs, he causes, he cuts, he decides, he eats, he gives, he goes. He has, he hears, he helps, he hopes, he insists, he knows, he likes, he lives, he loves, he makes, he moves, he names, he pleases, he prevents, he reads, he says, he sees, he sings, he sits, he speaks, he studies. Okay, so here we need another spelling rule. Y plus S should be I plus ES. And we do spelling rules with morphophonemic rules. So this will be morphophonemic. When the verb ends with Y, S, this will apply to the third singular present form. The new end of the stem is I, and the new end of the suffix is ES. Okay, the form will be third singular present. Okay, let's enter some examples. He studies. That's enough. Okay, and one thing to keep in mind, the suppletive rules, those are written by TBTA automatically for you. Whenever we enter in forms like this, TBTA creates this rule, so you don't need to write these. But if there is one, and then you add a new rule, the suppletive rules need to go at the end. So we just drag it down, and there we go. The suppletive form is always the last one for its group. Okay? So, okay, he studies, but I see that it didn't apply here. So let's fix this one. It shouldn't have applied, but it did. There must be some other morphophonemic rule going on. But for now, this is fine. Sees, sings, sits, speaks, studies, talks, tells, thinks, tries, waits, walks, wants, writes. Good. Okay, so now we have all of the forms in here that we've listed in here. And so now we're ready to begin importing this data into a phrase builder rule for verbs.